Abigail Blackrick, today in Ashton at the Ashton East Cemetery, speaking with Under Sheriff Justin Halliday about a very special dedication of this unknown U.S. soldier grave. Walk me back to the day when you found this grave. What was that like? What happened?
Well, last year I was mapping the cemetery off duty with my boys, my two sons, Austin and Luke. And as you see, there's a lot of stones around here. And in the section we're at right now, which they consider the oldest part of the cemetery, these people who are buried here, our ancestors, are from the 1820s, 1830s, mid-1800s. So there's a lot of stones here. Many of them are hard to read. A lot of the markings have been worn through the weather. Well, we came across this one, and when you look around here, it's different. It's bright, it's marble, the markings on it are still visible, and what caught my attention is when we went to Washington, D.C. and Arlington Cemetery back in 2010 on a family vacation, the same exact stone we seen there in the Civil War section. And I remember looking at it, and I said, well, you know, well, obviously it states it's an unknown soldier. Right. But what caught my attention is the fact that it's not one that was just put here by a family. Its markings, to me, represented U.S. government, something that was official. So I went home and I Googled it and I researched it, and this is exactly the same stone that's in Arlington Cemetery. It meets the same specification. It has to be 30 inches high, 4 inches thick, made out of marble. And so then it got me wondering, why is it here? Why is it my hometown? And why hasn't anybody ever told me it's here before? Yeah. And so I started looking through it, and I started finding out that no one else knew it was here either. I talked to the township officials when I reported the mapping back to them. They didn't know it was here. Spoke to family members. I've driven by here a number of times. No one knew it was here. Checking other cemeteries in the area, I didn't see one there either. So why is it here? Well, according to my research, back in the Civil War, there are obviously thousands. America's bloodiest most conflict, 650,000 so Americans died. And unfortunately, many of those who died were never identified. Back then, they didn't do dog tags. Back then, the only way they identified people was through, if they had the money, they had their names stitched in the collar. Well, a lot of people were poor and didn't have that kind of resources to do so. So a lot of people who died weren't identified. A lot of those who died in the battlefield were sometimes buried in mass graves, and it wasn't until after the war they went through trying to identify them. Well, some of the divisions, whether it be what state you're from, whether it be Michigan or Massachusetts, they wore special insignias or belt buckles. And so when they exhumed some of the graves to find out who these individuals were, or sometimes on the battlefield, the only way they could identify them was from the state they were from. And by doing so, they knew the number of enlistees or draftees from different areas, and there were a few from this area. And so they said, well, unfortunately, we are unable to identify your loved one, but we're going to bring, hopefully, him home.
So through your research, you discovered that this definitely represents a soldier who fought in the Civil War. Absolutely. But it's not clear if he was from this area, but more than likely he was.
Well, he was from this area. You got to understand, back in the 1860s, what we see here wasn't here. Right. Ashton was just getting started. Reed City was just getting started. Osceola County was just getting incorporated. Michigan itself had only been a state for 20 or so years. Wow, so yeah. This really wasn't a very populated area. It was farmland. It was area, a lot of logging going on. So this was a young gentleman who was from this area, whether he was from Ashton or Reed City. Ashton Cemetery is one of the oldest cemeteries in the area, so this kind of leads me to believe this is one of the first settled areas. So this is definitely Civil War. This type of stone was only used from 1873 through 1900, and it was specifically designed for unknown soldiers who were returning home from the Civil War.
Wow, that's special. So when you found this, I can't imagine what you thought.
Well, what made me most happy, I'll be honest with you, is my sons, both of them, had a lot of interest in it. You know, my wife and I are trying to raise them to have a lot of respect and honor, especially for the country we live in, and so it meant a lot to them. I mean, just having them here and picking up flowers and straightening flags on all these graves meant a lot to them. But this one meant so much that they came out here and, you know, they looked after it, made sure it had a flag, made sure it was clean. It meant a lot to them. That made me proud. But it also made me proud to think that, and a little ashamed to think that it's been here this long.
And no one's acknowledged it.
And no one's noticed it. So this poor soul who we're standing here with has been here, and maybe 100 years ago, maybe there was a ceremony back then. Maybe back then they did. But I don't think that you should forget someone, whether it be a loved one or especially this person.
And so today, that's really what we're doing here, and all these people are coming out for, is to honor this man who served for our country.
Correct. Kind of give him some recognition that it's been long forgotten.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Undersheriff Halliday, for doing this and joining me today.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. In Ashton, I'm Abigail Blackrick with My News 26.